Patterson, your written testimony implies that the FAST Act authorization levels rise faster for transit than for highways. In fact, highway and transit funding each increase an average of 3% per year over the 5 years of the FAST Act. This committee has stood by the 80-20 highway trust fund split for decades. Does AASHTO support maintaining this historic 80-20 split between highway and transit funding in future transportation bills as we did in the FAST Act?
Yes, sir, we do. We believe that transit...
Talk to the mic, please.
Yeah, sorry. We do believe that the 80-20 split is appropriate and should be maintained.
Thank you. And also, your testimony makes a compelling argument that direct funding is essential for highway and bridge projects. You have made the case that public-private partnerships, state infrastructure banks, TIFIA credit assistance, and local bonding initiatives are helpful, but will not replace real direct dollars. Can you please explain why most transportation projects cannot generate sufficient revenue through tolls, fares, or other payment models to provide a return on investment for private sector investors?
When you typically look at a transportation project across this country, when you're talking about rural or urban situations, there is no opportunity in most cases to toll that facility. Additionally, there's no economic way to capture the dollars that are generated along the route. An example, in Oklahoma, we have seen where in a small town in southern Oklahoma, they grew out and annexed out to what we call Interstate 35. They did that because of the economic development the interstate provided to them, but we could not, we as a DOT can't capture that. But there was benefit to the city through additional sales tax.
Thank you. I have one more question for you, sir, and then I'll move to the other witnesses. Earlier this year, Speaker Paul Ryan suggested that an infrastructure package should consist of 98% private funding. Specifically, the Speaker said that there should be a 40-to-1 ratio between private sector and public sector funding in a federal infrastructure package. Mr. Patterson, your testimony discusses the importance of direct federal funding for transportation, which accounts for 43% of highway capital expenditures nationwide. Do you believe that an infrastructure package that relies on 98% private funding can adequately address the needs of Oklahoma and other states?
I don't understand how you get to that perspective. It's something that I would have to learn more about.
Well, the perspective is basically that you have some sort of tax credits with federal funding. That amounts to 2%, and the other 98% comes in from private P3s or something. And you don't think that works?
I don't think it works in Oklahoma.
And but you do think it works elsewhere, just not in Oklahoma?
I can't speak for the other states, but I would imagine not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thomas, do you agree that public-private partnerships, state infrastructure banks, TIFIA credit assistance, and local bonding initiatives are helpful, but cannot replace real direct dollars?
They give us tools in the toolbox, but it needs to be a complete toolbox. Otherwise, you can't get the project done, sir.
And it's an incomplete toolbox without direct federal funding?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mayor Reed, do you believe that private investors will be able to fund the vast majority of highway and transit projects, or that most projects will require federal, state, and local funds to complete?
I don't believe that the private market will do that, because they will cherry-pick projects, which will lead essential projects that we need that are just not as attractive. And so the answer is I don't believe, I believe that the public-private partnership model is important, but it will not replace the need for our federal partners to bear the lion's share of the load, because the incentive to do a private deal is to make a profit for the private sector.
So in summary, for all three witnesses, the proposal that we have heard, the administration has not made a formal proposal, but the proposal that we have heard may be coming from the administration that they will do I think an 82% tax credit again for private partnerships, for private partnerships, and that'll fund $1 trillion in infrastructure, Do any of the three of you believe that that would work to fund $1 trillion in infrastructure? If the only federal money basically is an 82% tax credit?
I do not. I believe that you have to have a project model, not a tax credit model.
What do you mean by a project model?
I mean specific projects that you're identifying that the federal government is investing into in order to create jobs, as opposed to a tax credit model.
So there's got to be a federal investment in addition to tax credits.
Yes, in addition to a state and a local investment.
Yeah. Mr. Thomas, Mr. Patterson?
I agree with the mayor from Atlanta that there's got to be the direct investment, and that the tax credits wouldn't do it all by itself.
Thank you. Mr. Patterson?
I agree with the other two.
Thank you. So in summary, all our witnesses think that the proposal that I outlined, which is we have heard will be the administration proposal, would not in fact generate $1 trillion for infrastructure investment or anything near it. Is that correct? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. My time is well expired. I thank the chairman for indulgence in the time.
Mr. Ferguson, 5 minutes.
Mayor Reed,